Hello, my name is Quad Laser and I'm your go-to source for learning how to stream live music performance on Twitch TV. Alright, so over the last few weeks we've been learning how to set up OBS to work with our audio interface and Ableton Live, and then we learned how to set up Ableton Live for looper-based performances. This week we'll be going over 6 tips for putting on a completely improvised music performance on Twitch, YouTube, Mixer, or any other streaming platform. We're hoping to get some insight into the most important things we should be thinking about while we're performing live to give an interesting and fun show that won't get boring. If you're enjoying what you're learning, make sure to subscribe to the channel because next week we'll be diving deeper into the life of live streaming music performance.
Whoa, I almost forgot to say something important. I'm going to show you all the stuff on the piano, but all these techniques can be applied to literally any instrument.
Let's jump straight into tip number 1, levels. This is the most important tip, which is why I'm putting it first. Never, ever let your audio signals hit the red. If you do, it may not sound bad on your end, but the audience will hear a very noticeable clicking noise that will lead to a very poor quality performance. It's always smart to give yourself somewhere to go volume-wise, so I like to start out with everything a little bit on the quiet side. This is called giving yourself headroom. The easiest way to do that is to just drag all of your volumes down just a little bit lower than their default level. Some people might disagree with this, but I like to put a limiter on the master track. The purpose of a limiter is to try to prevent an audio signal from going over a specific volume. The limiter can be found in audio effects, and then grabbing limiter here, and then throwing it on top of your master track. I like to give it a ceiling of about negative 0.75 decibels, and then I drag the master fader down just a little bit. Hopefully what this will do is it'll prevent the audio signal from ever going into the red, and then creating that really horrible clicking noise. Tip number 2 is to create a foundation or groove. Building a foundation to your song usually starts with some drums, a bass line, or just some simple chords. It doesn't really matter which of these you start with, or even if you use any of them at all. But the important bit is that you start to build a sort of foundation that you're gonna then create the rest of your song around. At this point in time, I think it's a good idea to point out that you should probably know some common chord progressions or some of your own. And if you don't, maybe take the time to learn some, maybe write some down and have them in front of you when you're performing so that you can fall back on them if you ever need to. I actually use a technique a lot that I think sounds really cool and is also really good for beginners. It's called using a pedal tone. A pedal tone just means you're gonna base your song over top of one note. Something kind of like this. Tip number 3, create melody and harmony. Once you have your foundation going, you're gonna wanna find some sort of melody that sits on top of everything to keep things interesting. Once you're satisfied with the melody that you have, go ahead and loop it and then try to add a harmony on top of it. If you're not sure how to harmonize, don't worry, it's not required, but I would recommend learning how to do it at some point. If you want to see all this put together live on Twitch, I perform every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The link is in the description down below. If you have any questions at all, I'd be happy to answer them live. I also stream video games on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. Feel free to come in then and ask questions as well. Tip number 4, learn to solo. Okay, I know that's kind of an aggressive thing to say, but even Kowalski here thinks it's important to know how to solo. If you're going to be doing any live improvisation at all, at some point you're probably going to want to know how to solo.
Soloing can sound really intimidating, but it's actually a lot easier than it looks. The main trick is to learn the pentatonic scale. If you're unsure what that is, I'd suggest you look it up now because in this video, we're not going to go too deep into it. During your live performance, soloing is a time for you to show off your technical ability as well as just give something interesting to go off of for a little while. While you're soloing, make sure to not get too lost for too long because people will start to get bored.
Tip number 5, make interesting transitions.
At some point, you're going to decide it's time to move on to the next musical idea. That length of time is entirely up to you, but I usually like to try to keep my songs roughly between 5 to 15 minutes. Since this is a live improvisational performance, going a little longer is okay. This is where things get a little tricky, so I'm going to give you a couple of my key ways to transition, but I hope you can come up with some of your own. One of the easiest ways to kind of move your song into the next world is to change the drum groove. Sometimes I find it easy to just start playing a single note rhythm to move us into the next idea. Some ideas that I'm not showing here but that work as well are doing halftime or double time the current tempo you're doing, or to completely just stop.
Tip number 6, add flavor.
Add flavor? What does that even mean? What I mean is to find ways to add intrigue to the song without completely changing what's going on. One of the easiest ways to accomplish this is by using the return tracks on the right side of Ableton. You can see right here that on my B return track, I have a simple delay, which can be found under Audio Effects, simple delay here. And then the way that they work is if you have an instrument playing, you can send, see these A, B, C, D, you can send some of the signal to the return track and the return track will do its thing. So I have this delay set up to do some sort of ping-ponging effect, have a little bit of feedback and have 100% wet dry. So that way if I play my Rhodes here, and then I add a little bit of echo to it, so you can kind of hear it. And if I crank it up, we're going to hear it even more, or I can make it really subtle. This just gives us something to play around with. I also have here a really interesting delay called the plus plus delay by Soundhack. And let's hear what this one sounds like. So as you can see, you can get some pretty wild sounds out of this one. Another thing I like to do is a really common DJ technique, and it's called a filter sweep. My last little trick for adding some flavor is a built-in Ableton Live effect called One Knob Fade to Gray. Well, that wraps it up. As a quick recap, our 6 tips were: watch your levels, build a foundation or groove, create melody and harmony, learn to solo,
make interesting transitions, and add flavor. If you have any questions for me at all, feel free to reach out to me on Twitch, Twitter, or leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching.
Yes, beat a bada. Bada, beat a bada.